everybody. I'm Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness about blindness, visual impairment, and disability in general, in a happy and light-hearted way. For those of you that don't know, I am blind. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia. Try spelling that one. It basically means that when I was born, my eyes didn't develop properly, so I wear prosthetics instead. The goal of this podcast is to remove some of the stigma and stereotypes around disabilities, whilst also having fun at the same time. Each week, I will be interviewing people from all walks of life, including some with hidden or physical disabilities like mine, and getting to know a little bit more about them and the lives they lead. In this episode, I am very excited to tell you that I will be talking to content creator and blind footballer Toby Addison, aka Blindtobes. My name is Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. Hiya Toby, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm not too bad, thank you, Evie. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Well, first of all, it's absolutely amazing to have you on the podcast. I'm genuinely super excited to get to chat to you and hear all about your kind of incredible life and all the things you've done. But before we get into any of that, what have you been up to today?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. Today, it's been a pretty relaxed day for me. I've been doing some worky bits, but some pretty chill worky bits. I've been on England duties this weekend, so pretty tired from that. So I always decide the first day of a week on a Monday, when I've been doing football or whatever, will always be a relatively chill one. So yeah, not too bad for me today, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes total sense. You know, if you've had a tiring weekend, it makes total sense that you'd want that next day to just be a chilled one. I think that's completely valid. Now, I know that like me, you are visually impaired. I know that you have retinitis pigmentosa. And one of the things I found really interesting when I've talked to guests with that condition is kind of how varied it can be in regards to its onset and also its kind of deterioration over time. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience with it?
Yeah, it is quite interesting to be fair how different it can be from person to person. I've actually got two genes that impact my vision. So often RP presents itself in one gene. I've got an additional gene which is associated with early onset rod and cone dystrophy, which falls under the RP umbrella. It all gets a bit complicated. But I was registered blind from the age of 2. My parents got me checked out at my GP and then later on in the eye hospital just because it was quite obvious that there was something wrong. They couldn't tell what at the time. I didn't know it was with my eyes, but I didn't respond to like visual stimuli or kind of greet people in a way that, kids without sight loss would. So yeah, from the age of 2, I was registered blind and my sight deteriorated quite slowly over the next sort of 15, 16 years until I was about your age actually. And then things started to go really, really quickly. And then, we transitioned into being more conventionally blind, as people like to say, at the age of 16. And so now, yeah, I've got just some light perception, can tell when it's night and day, see some shapes if the contrast is right. But yeah, obviously people with RP, typically you don't lose your sight until you're in your 30s, 40s. The additional rod and cone bit obviously made mine a little bit more aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously with that, you kind of lost your sight, quite early on then, and a lot of it kind of was lost when you were a teenager. And I think being a teenager is hard enough, right? You've got high school, you've got exams, you've got all the things that kind of just come with being a teenager. But, on top of that, you in your teenage years lost, a fair bit of your vision, quite a lot of your vision. So, can you tell me about what your teenage years was like for you?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, to be fair. Like, I think people see a disability like blindness and they think, oh, that must be tough. And obviously, yeah, it is tough, especially when you're in your teenage years losing it. But they forget that you're still a teenager and you've got life to contend with that every normal teenager does, whether that's hormones or life events, falling out with friends, getting girlfriends, losing girlfriends, all of that kind of stuff. And I had some personal stuff going on at the time, which made my life hard as well as being blind. So yeah, being a teenager was really difficult with the sight loss. Socially, it was really, really difficult because I'd gone from a place where I had enough vision to do things like play football and go out and play outside with my mates after school or in school or whatever, to the point where I actually couldn't recognize people and I couldn't find my friends. I couldn't play football anymore. And I lost a lot of my friends because, we don't really learn too much about disability and especially sight loss when we're younger. So, yeah, a lot of the kids kind of backed off and didn't know how to act around me. So I ended up quite isolated and, yeah, had a bit of a rough time growing up. But, yeah, once I turned into sort of my adult years, sort of at 18, 19, I went to university. That all changed, thankfully. But, yeah, I sympathise with anybody who's their sight through their teenage years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does sound like it was a very kind of difficult, rocky period of your life for you. And I mean the social aspect as well, that is socializing is it's a big part of your teenage years, but it's also a weird part of your teenage years because everyone's changing, everyone's personalities are changing. So socializing and finding your group can be hard anyway, but obviously, I would imagine that must have been very tricky to navigate, like you say, as you were losing your sight and your friends not really understanding how to work with that.
Yeah, 100%. And when you're that age, especially when you're sort of 13, 14, you'll do anything to appear cool. Do you know what I mean? You just want to be seen as, I remember kids when they were that age wouldn't even want to walk outside in public with their parents because they were so obsessed with looking cool. So, for me, losing that independence and losing the ability to what I kind of thought was cool, even though now looking back on it, it's a different story. But, it was difficult. And yeah, I've got a lot of I've learned a lot from that period in my life, but also there's a lot of, like sadness when I look back at it as well. So yeah, it's for sure the hardest period of my life so far, I'd say.
Yeah, I can totally see why. I think that thing there as well about looking cool, wanting to be cool. I think one of the big things when you're a teenager, and I definitely know this now, is wanting to fit in. Like, it's like if you don't fit in and you don't kind of conform to what everyone around you is doing, you feel like you're kind of out of that circle. So obviously, for you wanting to look cool and wanting to fit in, but slowly losing that in your eyes, maybe then kind of appendance and independence and therefore ability to. When you're a teenager and all you want to do is fit in, it must have been really quite challenging.
Yeah, definitely. And are you in mainstream education at the moment?
Yes, yeah.
So you can probably, resonate with some of the things I'm saying about, feeling like you're slightly different to other people and hopefully you're at a point where you're learning that actually you're not, you're just a normal human being. But there was definitely a period in my life where I did feel different and I would have done anything to not feel different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I completely get it. I definitely I think we have different experiences, but also similar because you were losing your sight whilst being a teenager, and that is in itself a very difficult thing to contend with. I have never had sight, so I suppose I have always known and only known what being blind is like. I've never known what seeing is like, but I still like yeah, there's definitely like I also struggle with making friends and sometimes because some people just don't know how to interact around me and my cane. I
Yeah.
like my cane, but oh my God, it makes me so obviously different.
Yeah, 100%. And something that I learned like as I got older and got a bit more experience with socializing was actually your cane can be a bit of a secret weapon and a bit of an icebreaker. And if you kind of move around it in the right way, people start conversation with you rather than avoid you. But that was quite hard for me to learn when I was younger, for sure. And it is probably an interesting thing for people to kind of listen to, is the different perspectives of losing your sight and always being blind in terms of how you socialize and how you're seen by your peers as well. Because I think that was the good thing for me when I went to university, was I was already blind. I wasn't going through this transition. So I went in from day one, people knew that I was blind, and that wasn't a changing landscape at all. Whereas when I was in primary school, secondary school, it was getting worse. And that's probably why people backed off, because they didn't know what was going on. I didn't even know what was going on with my eyes. So how the hell were they meant to know? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely get what you mean. Yeah, I think like yeah, the cane can be a good icebreaker. I think it's about kind of finding how to make it a good icebreaker. Like I've definitely been out in public and been completely embarrassed of my cane, but I've also had it had people come up and ask me about it and had really great conversations because of it as well.
Yeah, yeah, and you just get different types of people. I suppose some people are more naturally curious, and some people are a little bit more like, oh, don't want to offend anybody, so I'm going to just avoid where possible. I'm quite interested though, because a lot of from what I've noticed anyway, a lot of my guy friends who are visually impaired or blind choose a cane, whereas a lot of my friends who are girls who are visually impaired or blind choose guide dogs. So how come you've chosen for the kind of cane aspect?
I kind of haven't. Basically, to explain it the best that I can, we don't have over here any habilitation specialists. So, for any of my listeners who may not know what that means, people who are able to teach me how to use my cane, teach me how to apply independent living skills so I can do things independently, or at least as independently as I can with adaptations. We don't have anyone over here who is qualified to do that. And so I have Guide Dogs UK come over 6 times a year, and there are about 5 or 6 children that they see, me being one of them. But I only get maybe 2 to 3 hours with them each time they come. So obviously, as you can guess, it's not much cane training. So not I'm probably a bit behind on my cane training and my independent living skills. I would really like to get a guide dog, but there's no guarantee I will.
Where are you based?
Um, so we're in the Isle of Man and we have a vision support service. Yeah, yeah. So we have a vision support service over here who are brilliant. They're really brilliant, but we literally do not have any qualified habilitation specialists. And Guide Dogs UK are amazing. They're trained to do it and they're lovely. But like 6 times a year isn't great.
No, no, that's yeah, I didn't even consider that really. Yeah, that must be tough. And would you said like your um independent skills are potentially a little bit behind. Would you ever go to like one of the blind colleges for adults?
Maybe I would. It was quite nice in a way. I went to New College Worcester for a summer camp, the summer just gone, and it was quite nice to see that I wasn't too far behind everyone else. I was about the same level. So that was good. That maybe I hadn't had as much training as some of the others, but I'd still caught up somehow. But like it's definitely been a conversation about going away to one of the blind colleges at some point. It does kind of scare me though, if I'm honest. Like it would be such a big change.
Yeah, yeah, it would be huge. I love those colleges because the football the English Football League that we have is based over in Hereford at the R&C College, and I never really knew anything about it until I went over there for football, and like I just love it over there. Like I definitely would have considered going if I didn't go to uni. I haven't been to the one in Worcester, but no, it would be a big change, especially if you're from such a like isolated place like the Isle of Man as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like it was a big thing for me to even go summer camp for 3 days, like let alone like do it permanently. But it's definitely something that's been talked about a fair bit.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'd always consider it. Well, to be fair, if there's anyone who's lost their sight recently and they come and approach me, because I get a lot of like DMs from people losing their sight or from parents of children losing their sight, I'll always say, well, check out the colleges and the schools around that specialize in that, because they are amazing, to be fair. I didn't realize how like developed they actually are.
Yeah, no, they're really, really good. I didn't realize either until I went to Worcester, but they are. they are incredible, and they have such amazing facilities as well. It was a real shock to me as well, like being a mainstream kid, finally going to like a school that is designed for visually impaired people. I was like, whoa, like this is really cool.
Yeah, it was unreal because you walk around, they've got like, I don't know about the Worcester one, but at Hereford, they've got like strips on the floor that your cane go over and you can feel exactly where the center of the path is and everything's got a shoreline and it's perfect. I wish the whole of the UK was like that because it would make my life very, very easy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely one for an inner shoreline. If I've got like a wall that I can follow, I'm happy. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, things like that. Yeah, Worcester was kind of like that. I mean, we were guided a lot of the time because we were going from activity to activity, but everything was so kitted out. We had lines on the floor, like when we were doing sports, where that we could feel with our feet, where we could, stand, so we knew exactly where we were, and everything was just so accessible. Like it wasn't a big deal. Everything was just made accessible.
Yeah, well, that is what accessibility is. Able-bodied people have their access needs met. It's just unfortunate that a lot of people don't, or people with disabilities don't have their access needs met. But the thing is, it wouldn't even take that much in terms of in very populated areas to make places accessible for blind people like that. But I don't know, there's some reluctance somewhere from government or lack of funding, whatever it is. But yeah, would make our lives very easy.
Oh, it really would. Yeah, I know. It's something I we talk about quite a lot on the podcast. It's like it really doesn't take that much to make things accessible, but it's a very big deal, or it seems to be.
Yeah, it is. We'll keep monitoring that one. In 10 years' time, we'll have a conversation. We'll see if anything's changed.
Yeah, yeah, that would be good. Um, you mentioned about kind of your friends not, but your friends kind of not being too sure what to do as you were losing your sight. And one of the things you mentioned there was about, we don't learn too much about disability and sight loss when we're young. Do you think that would be a good thing for young people to learn more about?
Oh, 100%. I couldn't back it enough. Like the curriculum has like evolved over time now, and we're seeing like minorities enter the curriculum. So whether that's about sexuality, race, gender, whatever it may be, which is fantastic. But it does seem like disability gets swept under the carpet a little bit. And it is quite a complex thing for kids to understand, especially maybe at primary school level. But I think the earlier that kids can learn about this kind of thing or just interact with disability, it doesn't even have to be learning about it, it's just interacting with the whole topic of disability. That makes such a big difference. And I've gone in and done some workshops and some talks at schools and always, have good feedback and good engagement from the kids. But, I'm like a drop in the ocean. So, what I do doesn't make the biggest difference. It needs to be, nationalized. But yeah, it's a hard one because it would be hard to integrate into the curriculum. I do understand that.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think yes, it would, but I think it would be such a valuable thing to integrate into the curriculum, and I think it can be adapted as well for all ages. Like you say, primary school children who may not be able to understand it that much, but there's always ways, I think, of explaining it where primary school kids could have, they don't have to have a great deal of understanding, but at least some understanding of kind of disability and what that might entail.
Yeah, 100%. And it's for understanding that people are different and people have different needs to other people. There is no baseline normal human being. We're all different in our own way, and disability is a part of that. Like I think it's 17% of the population has some form of disability, which is massive. It's barely a minority when you think of it in that way. It's nearly 1 in 5 people. So yeah, I'm slightly baffled as to why it's not like a mainstay in the curriculum. But again, we'll monitor that one. I'll come back to you in 10 years again and we'll see if it's changed.
We've really got a lot of things to talk about in 10 years' time. But yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with you there. I'm curious, we've talked about, kind of the social side of school, but I'm curious about kind of the academic side of it. How did you kind of learn as someone who was losing your sight? Did you use a screen reader? Did you have anyone sort of supporting you in classes? How did that work for you?
So when I was younger and losing my sight, I was a terrible student, like really, really bad, like class clown. Like I said, I would have done anything to fit in. So I think I overcompensated from losing my sight to trying to fool around a bit and make people laugh. And that meant pushing away any bit of support that I got. So I had support assistants in my class, and at this point I could read really big fonts. So I'd have all of the PowerPoints put onto my laptop, and I'd obviously follow along by reading. Um, and I should have used a screen reader way, way, way before I did, but I just didn't want to. I was just clinging on to any site that I did have, so I just kept increasing the font size and kept trying to read, and that had its own problems. And I was quite lucky that I was naturally quite like academic, so despite falling around in class and being an absolute idiot, I got by with grades, so never really got any consequences of that. But yeah, there was a point where I needed to start using the support I got, because I understood one day that I need these grades. I need my GCSEs to get onto my A levels, and I need my A levels to get to uni and actually do something. So yeah, I can't tell you where that point was that I changed and started using the support, but it did happen very quickly.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I think it's really interesting what you said about sort of wanting to cling on to those last little bits of sight that you had. And I think it makes total sense. I don't know from personal experience, but I do know from, and I can imagine from talking to people, losing your sight is must be such a kind of difficult thing. And I think it makes complete sense that you kind of, because you go from having, a good degree of sight to almost nothing. And do you remember what you were feeling during that time? Were you kind of scared or sad that you were losing it, or angry? Do you remember any of those kind of emotions?
Yeah, I definitely have blocked a lot of it out. Like I, I feel like the word trauma is overused a lot now, but I think there is some trauma there for me. So I kind of struggle to remember the process in my head, but I was never scared, because I don't think I understood the magnitude of it. Because when you're losing your sight so slowly, you don't really notice the differences year by year. But if you looked at it from 1 year to maybe 5 years down the line, you'd see a big difference. But I never really felt it, so I always had it in the back of my head, like maybe I'll just never go blind. When actually I was losing my sight, I just couldn't really tell. Um, I was definitely angry and frustrated, and yeah, lashed out at people like emotionally, and never physically, but yeah, was rude to people, and thankfully they understood that and never held it against me in the future. But yeah, it's a hard process, and it's a process that's different for everybody. There's people have lost it in the same way as me, and they were scared and sad, and didn't necessarily feel that anger. But I felt that anger and frustration, and it lasted for quite a few years. And then once I did get to the point where I didn't have like usable vision, that it all kind of left me weirdly, and I was just content with it and just cracked on and learned how to live life blind.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong here, but in a way, was it almost a little bit of a relief when you kind of didn't have any usable vision because you kind of weren't going through that kind of really slow process anymore? You kind of reached the end of that, so you then had to, like you say, just kind of crack on with things.
Yeah, potentially. There was a literal, I remember it actually. I remember this a day where I was like, well, that's it then. It's not going to get like worse from here. Let's just see what we can do then. And yeah, a relief maybe. I don't know. I've never really reflected on it too much, but there was definitely a change in the way that I like perceived the world around me and perceived myself and my disability. And yeah, maybe it's a maturity thing. I don't know. Maybe it was just part of growing up. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just I find it really strange to look back on it and see such a like contrast in the way that I behaved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a contrast that completely makes sense. But yeah, like you say, kind of strange to look back on now.
Mm.
I wonder then, if you could give your teenage self one piece of advice, what do you think it would be?
Probably to engage with the help around you. Stop pushing the help away. Stop trying to fit in. What I'd say now is for people that you knew in school, you don't have anything to do with now. You don't know them. They don't remember you at all. I mean, they might have seen my face on social media, to be fair, but
Yeah.
I've got nothing to do with them. They don't impact me now at all. So, put the things that need to be put first, and try and learn how to live life blind, because from not using things like screen readers or my cane or assistive technology or anything, it did make the kind of learning process as to how to be independent as a blind person a lot harder than it should have been. So always just prepare yourself for that inevitable sight loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a, some really good advice as well. I think that's definitely, yeah, definitely really good. But you know, do you think that more could be done to kind of link up and understand the kind of impact that visual impairment has on mental health?
Yeah, yeah, there can always be more. I think it's a different question to say like, is there enough? Um, I've always felt supported, and I've always known the kind of pathways that I can go down to get support. But I'm quite a lucky person. I've got a really good like family around me. I've got good friends around me, a good, relationship that I've been in for a long time now. Some people don't necessarily have that and might find it harder. And that probably contributes more to mental health as well. It's probably a factor that would make someone feel worse. So I think potentially needs to be more work around awareness and kind of educating people who are losing their sight or who have lost their sight into what support they can get. My degree was in counselling psychology, so it's something I feel quite passionate about, just mental health in general. So yeah, I think there are things in place, but again, then you need to look at, well, is it easily accessible? Does it cost a lot of money? Is there a huge waiting list to just get on these services? So yeah, it's a hard question to answer because my initial answer would be, yeah, there is stuff out there, but then my response to that would be, no, it's not necessarily accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a thing. It's like there is, but is there enough? And how can that be made easier to access?
Yeah, I think as well, there's obviously been research done into it. There's research being done into everything known to man, but the effects of sight loss or blindness just on your like general living, like your general independence, your general mood, that should probably be looked into more. And, like we go to our eye hospitals each year, I go to Moorfields, and it's all very much how's your sight, how's your independence, but it's never how are you? And maybe
Yeah.
that needs to be something that's introduced.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think there is definitely a link between sight loss and how that can affect your mental health as well. And maybe that then does branch out into how independent you are and how that can affect you. And, there's lots of different things, but I think there definitely is a distinct link between the two.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And mental health, if you have poor mental health, it will affect every like facet of your life outside of like your blindness and just your general living. It will affect your ability to socialize, your ability to do your job or even find a job in the first place, your motivation, your fitness, your health, all of that kind of stuff. So it is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like the start of a bit of a chain reaction. If
Yeah.
you're struggling with your mental health, it will knock and affect everything. So I think it is something that's definitely there's more awareness being raised on it, and I think people are being educated on it. But like a lot of things, I think the more it's talked about, the better it is.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd always encourage, firstly, like people in that position to talk about their position where possible, and then obviously encourage people kind of outside of that, like environment, so just the general population to like be aware and be like interested in it, if that makes sense, like engage with it and like see how you can help. Because there's always this thing of like the blind community is very small. So why should there be all of this work put into something that's going to benefit not many people? But that's actually a really toxic and negative way to view just people in general. So I think that people outside of the blind community have a responsibility to help as well.
I completely agree with you there. It's a bit of a strange mentality, isn't it? Like, why would you? It may be a small community, but why would you kind of use that as a reason not to put things in place to help those people? Because at the end of the day, they're still people.
Well, yeah, and that's been the whole issue in terms of accessibility for as long as it's been a thing is, you might have a shop that needs to put a lift in because it has no like step-free access. And they're like, well, we've had no wheelchair users ever enter our shop. But the thing is when you make something accessible and you put effort into including people, is you'll not only get more people come and use your service or just in general like approach you, but they'll come back and they'll be loyal to you. And that's a big thing and it can't be understated. But that's probably a topic that I'm not too much of an expert in, but it's definitely something I want to involve myself in.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not an accessibility expert either by any means, but I think it is a very interesting topic to talk about and discuss. You mentioned earlier that you studied psychology at university, and I was wondering, how was that transition from school to university? Because that's a big transition itself, but also how did you find university as someone who is visually impaired?
So it's really weird because I went into university with no anxiety at all, no nerves. I was just completely ready for it. I think I was fed up with kind of how the previous years had been in sixth form and secondary school. And I was just ready for the change and kind of have a clean, fresh start. I packed my bags and moved 100 miles away from where I grew up, said goodbye to my family and, decided to live, at that point completely independently. So the transition went a lot smoother than I thought it would. And I made friends really quickly and, my life completely changed. And I genuinely like attribute all of the success that I have today to that transition that I made. Because it just, made me a completely better person in all aspects. So yeah, it was good. I had my like tough points with uni in terms of workload and burnout and things like that. But I think everyone goes through that. But I loved university and I'd always encourage blind or visually impaired people to at least consider it as an option because it is daunting and it's intimidating. But if you can find the right uni that can give you the right support, then you should hopefully have a smooth time with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like, based on what you've told me there, it was a really great thing for you. I mean, it's a it's a big step up, like you say, moving in your case 100 miles away from home and a complete kind of life change. Do you think it made you more independent in any way, or did you already kind of have the skills and it was just about putting them into place?
I was good enough at my home in terms of skills. Like I could cook basic meals and feed myself, and I did that quite a lot. I think my mum wanted me to figure that out myself, so she encouraged me to, learn how to cook and do all of this kind of stuff. I learned like the whole just independent living in terms of doing your washing, cleaning your room, clean. I mean, obviously I cleaned my room anyway, but like deep cleaning your room because your mum's not there. And that was a big change. Then balancing your work and your social life and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm really grateful for the experience, and I'm sad that it's been and gone. I went to uni 5 years ago now, which is crazy. It's flown by. But if I could go back to that day and do it all again, I would for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it was really great for you. You mentioned you study psychology, and I'm wondering kind of what made you want to study that?
So this goes back to where I was messing about in school, and I honestly had no ambition or direction. I had no clue where I was going. I used to be a sprinter, so I ran me 100 and 200 meters, and I was decent enough. And I thought that I'm just going to be a full-time athlete, and that'll pay my bills, and I won't have to get any qualifications. And then one day I broke my hip, and it never fixed properly, and I couldn't do the athletics anymore. And at that point, I had to crack on with actually putting effort into my like GCSEs at the time. And then it came to choosing our A levels, and I had no clue what I wanted to do because, like I said, I hadn't thought about it before. And off of a whim, um, my school Senko was just like, why don't you try psychology? You seem like you'd be good at it. You like things like science and whatnot. I was like, okay, why not? Just put it down literally the day of the first day that school started for sixth form. I just was like, okay, fine, whatever, I'll do it. And then that just made me fall in love with psychology, and I loved the A level, and from there decided to go into um, the degree in it. And I think one thing is thinking about as a blind person what jobs are actually accessible for you and what you'd be good at. And I wanted a job where I'd be talking to people face to face. I didn't want to use too much technology because I wasn't good at it at the time. And counselling just seemed like a good kind of avenue for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think psychology, like you say, is a really interesting thing to learn about. And I think it's mad that you like you say you kind of put it down on the first day of sixth form. And you may not have maybe done it had your Senko not recommended it to you.
No, definitely not. And there's lots of times in my life where things have fallen down to, chance, complete chance. And I don't really believe in fate. But when I look back at, some things that have gone on in my life, I do think, oh, how lucky was that? Or what are the chances of that? So that was definitely one of those moments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like fate's such an kind of interesting thing, but whether you believe in it or not, I think we all have at least one moment in our lives where you kind of look back and go, yeah, that was very lucky or a very mad chance of that happening.
Yeah. Sometimes the stars just align for you.
Yeah, they definitely do. Now I know that you create lots of social media content, and I was wondering kind of what sparked your interest in content creation, and then what made you decide that you wanted to start creating content of your own?
I'll tell you what, I never had an interest in it. I never ever wanted to do it. Like I said, I was at uni, I was thinking that I was going to be working in the NHS or doing private kind of counselling stuff, doing more qualifications to do with that. And it just so happened that, and this is one of these moments that I talk about the stars aligning. I was at a comedy show and there was a crowd interaction that went viral on social media. And there were lots of comments about me as a blind person across these platforms. And I was like, oh, these are really stupid questions. Like, why don't I just make my own video on TikTok and respond to some of them? And so I did. And I went to bed that night after posting it. My girlfriend Natalie at the time had helped edit it and do all of this stuff. And it had 2 views. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's that then. Not going to be the next KSI. And then woke up in the morning and it was on 1 million views. And I was like, oh, Christ. Okay, that's kind of mental. And I'd gone up like 10,000 followers like in the day. And I was like, oh, well, might as well make another video then and do some more. And that went viral and gained more followers and more followers. And then the next thing you know, I've signed with an agency and got a manager and all of this kind of stuff. And then a few days after that, I was a Gymshark athlete. So it all just happened out of the blue. And, you know, yeah, I was finishing my degree at the time and my life plans just completely changed.
Wow, I mean, that is mental. Like it's it's such a mad thing, social media. Like, and specifically things going viral. Like I can absolutely see why your video would have gone viral. But like the whole going viral thing in itself, how the algorithm can push that to, let's just say, like 1 million people over a night, and them all watch and enjoy that video, and like in your case your life can be changed because of it. It's such a mad thing.
Yeah, you're one video away. And I'll always say that to people. Like, if anyone wants to get into content creation, the first thing I'll say is like, make sure you actually want to do it because there's a lot of negatives that come with whether you're an influencer in quote unquote or whatever. I don't like that word, but by definition, I am one. But there's a lot of bad things that come with that, so make sure you're ready. But then the second thing I say is just do it. Like, if you want to do it because there's a slim chance that it will go viral, but there's always a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that chance definitely happened for you, but your life kind of did a complete turnaround in a very quick space of time. Do you think you really, in that very short space of time, process what was happening, or was it all kind of go, 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 and you didn't really have much time
Never,
to appreciate?
never ever processed it. I just couldn't believe it. Like, it felt like the world wasn't real for a period of time. And it was quite difficult because obviously I got this new opportunity in terms of social media and doing work with brands and stuff. But I was also, like I say, finishing my degree. I had to focus on my dissertation, and I was, obviously had to put that first where I could. But it was quite hard having this distraction in the background where all you want to do is refresh your phone to see if your followers have gone up. And for a little bit of time, I got really obsessed with numbers in terms of views and likes, comments, and followers and all this kind of stuff. And actually, it's quite unhealthy. And that didn't last too long, thankfully. But for sure, it took me a few months to even wrap my head around what I was doing and to think like, oh, is this actually sustainable? Like, can this pay my rent long term? Can I make this a career? And thankfully now, what are we, like 3 years later? I've definitely made a career so far out of it. But even now, I look back at it, I'm like, that is crazy how that happened.
It is. It's really crazy. Like I yeah, it's mental. And like you say there about when you first started, like you like uni plus social media. I mean, that is a balancing act if there ever was one. And like, you know, I like it's such a like it's a real like you say, you were trying to put uni first, but all you wanted to do was check your socials. I mean, that is really a very impressive thing to do that you were able to get through uni, but also have an incredible social media career at the same time.
I mean, I tell you what happened. So I don't know if you ever saw the show Michael McIntyre's The Wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So I was on that, and
Right.
this was so my first video went live in February. I gained loads of followers and got my management team in March, and then on April I was invited to go on The Wheel. And this was at the point where my dissertation was being written, my final bits for uni needed to be submitted. And I remember talking to the producers and they were like, we don't want to take you away from like having to do your uni. We don't want to distract you. Like when we don't want to be responsible for that. I was like, no, 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 it's fine, it's fine. So I go on the show and I ended up winning. And I won a very, very big chunk of money on the show. And then I've had to go home afterwards to my like uni house and go and do all of my dissertation, all my uni work, knowing what I've just done has just happened, and play dumb because I wasn't allowed to tell anyone the result or anything. And like it was just that wouldn't have happened if I didn't do social media, and it was just the most ridiculous period of my life. You can hear it in the way I'm speaking. I still can't
Yeah,
understand like how it happened or what even happened, but yeah, it was mental.
that is insane. Like it's how on earth in a few months did all that happen? Like that is absolutely insane. And something like that's such a big thing. Like, how much did you want to tell everyone? I'm imagining a big chunk of you really wanted to tell people.
Honestly, I was desperate because I was, how old was I? 20 at the time. So it was a literal life-changing amount of money. And I remember I rung my mum because my mum and my dad obviously knew that I was doing the recording that day. They wanted to know how it went. So I rang them individually. And I was like, oh, yeah, like I got to the last question and then it was on art. And the question was actually on art. So when they watched it back, they were like, everything was happening how I told them. I was like, it was on art. Obviously, I know nothing about art. I got it wrong. And then the person after me won the money. So I got nothing. And I had to put on like this whole, like I should have done GCSE drama realistically. This was unreal. And they believed me. And then it come round to the show like a good year later. It didn't air for another year. So imagine having to keep that secret for that long.
Oh
And then
God.
they were watching it, and I just get these phone calls like, "What happened? You told me you lost." And yeah, it was so difficult not to tell anyone.
Yeah, I don't know if I would be able to do that. Like that is a skill in itself. Keeping a secret for that long, that is a skill in itself. Honestly, though, you should have done GCSE drama because that is impressive.
I know. Yeah, the thing is, I because it was so long, it did get to a point where I like not forgot about it, but it definitely got pushed to the back of my mind because I didn't know when it was going to come out. So, I thought it might be out maybe 3 months later, 6 months later. For it to be a year, like obviously I didn't wake up every morning thinking, oh, I wonder when that's going to be out. So I did forget. So it wasn't that hard to keep it a secret for the whole time, but initially it was definitely really hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now kind of going back to that social media and content creation chat, what do you enjoy about creating content?
Um, From a personal perspective, I love the flexibility it gives me. I love being self-employed and being able to like manage my own hours and my own work and that kind of thing. But obviously, the type of content I make is, quite sensitive, and I like that it does help people. I get a lot of messages saying, "Oh, this video helped me in particular," or I've got a child who's losing their sight, and you've made me so much more hopeful for their future." And you do get this real sense of like appreciation from people, and you do get the kind of sense that you're helping. So I really like that aspect of it. And obviously, it's taken me some really like cool places as well. But to be able to make content about such a sensitive topic and help hopefully quite a large amount of people, that's a really good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm wondering kind of, your first video went viral overnight and that period of your life was very go, go, go and very quick. But when did it start to feel real that this social media thing could be a real sort of career for you?
I think the first year was just kind of like, we'll see how this goes. Like especially in today's world, you need a fairly big income to like just sustain your normal living, especially where I live in the southeast, things are just really, really expensive. So I was like, okay, we'll just monitor it, see how we go. And then after that first year, and I was consistently pulling in contracts and stuff, I was like, okay, maybe this is doable. And then even now, I still sit here and I'm like, I don't know how long this is going to last. Like it could all fold tomorrow. Like I might never get another contract again or whatever, or do a bit of work again. So to be completely honest with you, like I don't think it ever really sets in, especially this line of work, because it changes so much.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's something I've never really thought about, but now you say it, it does make so much sense because you're doing like 20 things within one line of work. So yeah, I get it does that does make complete sense. And I guess it never would really feel kind of I would imagine you'd get used to it, but never feel normal.
Yeah, like I wake up and I know what I need to do each day, and week by week I understand what my role is. But my job, like content creation, isn't obviously my full part of my job. Obviously, I play football, which I'm on a contract for. I do public stuff, so whether that's speaking or panel discussions for accessibility or going into schools, for example, that kind of thing. So there's loads of different things that I do, and it's about keeping all of them, like all of those plates spinning at the same time. So it can get a bit hectic sometimes, but no, I love it. I really, really love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a really fun thing to do and to be a part of. You mentioned that at the start of your social media journey, you went through a bit of a phase where you were very kind of you checked your phone a lot to see whether your followers had gone up and, whether your likes have gone up, whether your views have gone up. I think that's a really I mean, I don't know much about social media and content creation, but I think when social media is very in a way likes, views, comments, shares focused, I would imagine that that's quite a difficult thing to kind of then break self out of and realize that it's not actually all about that.
Yeah, and this is, I've been doing it for a few years now, so I've got a fair bit of experience, not like, a crazy amount, but I'm not new to it anymore. And that's what I'll say to a lot of people getting into content creation is there will be a day where you actually don't really care about the views. Obviously, I care about them in the sense if I want my videos to do well, of course I do. But it isn't the be all and end all. It's about consistency and what your content is actually about. Are you proud of the content you're making? Like, do you think it's meaningful? Is it valuable? All of that kind of thing. And every now and then a video will go viral and I'll be happy and I'll, I don't know, I might have a beer and celebrate. But it isn't about that. It's about the impact that you have online. And there are far too many people who make content with the sole aim of just self beneficiary.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with you there. I would, obviously with social media is such a massive platform, and there are so many different social media apps within that. But how accessible do you find the social media apps that you use? And can you think of any ways that they could be improved for visually impaired users?
Yeah, to be fair, like there aren't many apps that are fully accessible. TikTok's horrendous
Yep.
for a screen reader. Instagram's just as bad. It all just comes down to like, it's not compatible with the screen readers. Things aren't labeled properly. Like back buttons, for example, aren't labeled as back buttons. They just have the links behind them. Even today, I've just gone onto TikTok. I've tried to look at comments on videos, and the screen reader just won't find the comments at all. And I'm like, this is so simple. And you're a multi billion-pound industry or company that, clearly isn't prioritizing accessibility. And it just feels really, really silly to me. So a lot of the times with things like editing and responding to comments and things like that, I do get Natalie to do. That's her kind of side of the job that we share. Which is a shame because I'd like to have that interaction with the people commenting. But yeah, it just does come down to labeling, I think, and coding the apps properly. I'm not very tech savvy when it comes to like screen readers and apps and all of that kind of stuff, but it seems pretty basic to me.
I've always thought this. Like, I don't actually know how hard it would be, but surely it can't be very difficult. Like, I would imagine, yes, there's definitely work that goes into it, but I would imagine it's not too difficult because I definitely agree with you there. And I was going to mention like TikTok is a big one for me in terms of it's okay. And if you work hard enough, you kind of can get around it. But like you say, back buttons, like my one of the back buttons I use on TikTok, like to get out of a specific thing and back onto the For You page, it's just like a load of numbers and letters, and you just learn that that's a back button. And so I think when it comes to a lot of apps, one of the things I've definitely found, and you may as well, is you kind of have to do a little bit more work than the sighted person may have to actually teach yourself how you're going to navigate around it.
Yeah, and then it goes and changes in an
Yeah,
update.
then it updates. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's draining, and especially when I'm lucky that things like TikTok are part of my job. But when it is part of your job and it's that important, you want to be able to access it completely, and it's quite frustrating when you can't. And yeah, it shouldn't be difficult because you look at I don't know, just look at an iPhone in general, which has been set up to be completely compatible with VoiceOver, for example. It's just surely it's just labeling the links. Surely, surely it's all.
Yeah, I know.
Don't
This is
come for me. If anyone knows about screen readers, don't come for me in the comment. I haven't got a clue. But
Yeah, no, me neither. Like I'm a screen reader user, but do I know the first thing about actually how it works? No. Like I just use it. But like this is the thing. iPhones are great. iPhones and the screen reader that they have is brilliant. And so it's like the screen reader's so good. All you kind of need is for the apps that you use to work with this incredible screen reader.
yeah, yeah. Well, no. That's all I can say to you is they don't.
No, they don't. And I would really love if they could. But do you often find because I one of the things I've also found, basically all my mates are sighted, aside from a fair few. And one of the things I've found is that there's an assumption, and I get where it comes from, that social media apps are pretty much completely accessible. So I've definitely heard before that, like, I've definitely been asked before if like TikTok videos are audio described to me and stuff like that by my screen reader. Do you often find there's that assumption there that things are more accessible than they actually are?
I think it's quite polarizing because there's people who can't even comprehend that you can use a phone, and
Yeah.
then people who think the technology is so good that like it's almost effortless for us. The reality is it's just kind of a happy middle. It's not, the technology is not crazy. It's not giving us information as it comes. It's just kind of reading a screen every now and then. Um, and it's not badly designed in the sense that we can't send a text message. And I think that's just what disability is in general. People have their views on it based on how they've interacted. That might be through things like media and TV, or it might be they've seen something in real life and just formed their whole opinion on disabled people on that one interaction. So yeah, it's hard to explain. And the thing is, because it does change because of things like updates and apps function differently. It's hard to explain to sighted people that actually, okay, on one day on one app I might be able to do this, but the next day on a different app I might not be able to do the same thing.
Yes, it's a very complicated little world of its own. And yeah, I agree with you. It is very hard to put into words how much we can and can't do. But yeah, the polarizing, what you were talking about there, like the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. I've definitely experienced both. It's a very strange thing.
Yeah, no, it's people love to see things in extremes. We love to think that something is either one whole thing completely or not at all. And the reality for most people on planet Earth is we all just fit in the middle somewhere. I'd like to say me and you are pretty average, normal people. There's nothing special
Yeah.
about us. There's nothing like particularly like wrong with us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's quite hard to explain, but we are just average people. I have my job, I pay my taxes, I like to watch the football on the weekend. I'm not running around New York City like doing flips like Daredevil, and equally, I'm not sat in my room, in the dark listening to Stevie Wonder doing nothing all day. It's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's I do agree with you there. Like it's often much harder to for people to kind of realize that there is a medium which most people fit into rather than it being one end of a scale, one extreme of a scale.
Yeah, hard to explain.
Yeah, very much so. You've kind of briefly mentioned already that you're also a blind footballer. So, what sparked your interest in the sport and what do you enjoy about it?
So I played sighted football a lot growing up when I had some sight. And when I couldn't play that anymore, I was gutted. Really, really upset. That was one of the biggest losses really from losing my sight. And for a good period of time while I was blind, I didn't play football. I knew that blind football existed, but I didn't really know to what like capacity. And it just so happened that one of the England players saw one of my TikToks and they lived about 20 minutes down the road from me. So they were like, oh, come down, come and give it a go. So I went over and, tried. And firstly, the level that he was at just blew my mind. Like I couldn't comprehend how good he actually was. Because I went into it thinking, oh, it's gonna be a bit slow, it's gonna be messy, it's not gonna feel like football. And I was just completely wrong. And I was terrible at it because it's a completely different sport to sighted football in terms of like your technique and how you should be thinking and all of this kind of stuff. And I said to myself, I'm not going to go back and do that. It's too hard. Like, I'm never going to be any good at it to play any game, so why bother? But I guess my love for football just took me back. I went back each week, and I owe a lot to his name's Brandon. I owe a lot to him for showing me the basics and moving me up into at the time what was Brighton's blind setup. And then yeah, a few years later and a bit of consistency, found my way into the England squad.
Wow, I mean that's amazing. And I think do you think you ever would have tried it had you not been invited to come down and give it a go?
Um, I don't know really. I reckon I would have tried it. Maybe I would have come across an event where there was some kind of like blind football exhibition on or something. I don't know. But I guarantee you that I would have obviously been bad at it because I found out from the first time I tried with Brandon that I was pretty bad. And I think I wouldn't have had it in me to go back because I, didn't know that there was someone 20 minutes down the road who could teach me everything I need to know. Um, so yeah, maybe. But again, it's one of those things where the stars align and the opportunity came up and thankfully I had the right resources in place to take it.
Absolutely. There's definitely been a few of those moments for you, it sounds like, where things have worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I'm I think my luck's balanced out. Obviously, I was born with a disability, so someone up in the skies is looking down and be like, "Oh, let's give him some luck. Go on."
Yeah. It's like take the disability and we'll give you some lucky, a bit of good luck to go along with that. It's a happy medium between the two.
That's it. And but bizarre things do seem to happen to me. There are, like I say, lots of moments that I look back and I'm like, "How on earth did that happen?" But yeah, football's definitely one of them, and I love it now. And being able to go up to like a place like St George's Park, which is like the main hub for English football, and the disability setups are there as well. And use their crazy, crazy resources and facilities and all this kind of thing. It's just amazing being able to travel the world as well, while doing it and being paid to do it. That's just, yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really incredible thing to be a part of, I think, and that as well, that kind of camaraderie of being on a team as well. I would imagine that that's great.
Yeah, I'd never really interacted with any blind people before blind football. Like yourself, I've gone through mainstream education and university, and I've known visually impaired people along the way, but never really had long-term friendships with them or anything. So it's the first time that I actually found someone like myself, just an average lad who's blind who loves football. And there was something in that, even to this day, like a few years later, like I just love and appreciate all the time. And to be able to, train hard and put all of this effort into this bigger picture with effectively your best mates, it just makes it so much more worth it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like you said earlier, being able to do so many things within the sport and being able to play at so many incredible places. You mentioned that you played sighted football a bit as a kid, and now to be able to play the sport you love and be able to do it at such an incredible level, I would imagine that's a bit of a full circle moment in itself.
Yeah, definitely. And last month we were in America for a tournament out there, and I got my first England cap. And it's moments like that in your life where we got to take our shirts home with us. Your first ever England shirt, and you hold it, and it's just something that you'll always treasure, and moments that you'll never forget. And that's what football's given me, and that's what football's about. It's not about getting on the pitch and scoring an amazing goal. It's about the emotional stuff as well. So yeah, hopefully there's more big moments to come, and there's lots of stuff in the pipeline for it. But yeah, already given me some unreal moments.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it. And I think there will definitely be more to come. Now, I think that, people with visual impairments are often subjected to a variety of kind of comments and questions and assumptions. And I know that that's something that you talk openly about. Do you think that change is filtering through in society in terms of people's perceptions and awareness of visual impairment?
I'd like to think so. I really would like to think so. And without sounding too arrogant or big-headed, I like to think that people like myself are contributing towards that. People like yourself as well. There will be people who have never interacted with blindness who have found your podcast and obviously learned a lot. And I think that change is massive. I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, I never knew this about blindness, and I just helped someone off a train in the way that you said would be best. And I might have just grabbed them beforehand, whereas this time I asked if they needed help and they took my arm. And like that is such a big difference and such an improvement. And it makes me feel so happy. Obviously there's still learning to be done and obviously people that haven't been reached. But from when I was growing up, I definitely would say that the perceptions are changing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also shows how valuable education can be and how valuable, raising awareness and talking about these topics can be in helping people learn more about them who may not have come across it beforehand.
Yeah, and that's the power of social media, and that's why I'm very against things like TikTok being banned, is because yeah, there's a load of let's be real, there's a load of crap on TikTok.
Yeah.
But there's a corner of it which is really useful. Like whatever struggle you're going through in life, you'll be able to find somebody on TikTok making videos about it and find someone to relate to and find a way to either help yourself in the processes that you're going through, or as someone outside be able to help someone through their own process. And that's so valuable. And the ability to have just at the click of the fingers, potentially millions and millions of views, that you can make such a big difference with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think social media is an underrated tool. It's very powerful and can and is a lot, being used for good. I think it's a really cool thing, social media. The fact that you can post a video and it be shown to millions of people and help millions of people. I think it's unlike anything we have ever really experienced.
Yeah, because it takes the kind of power away from your traditional media. Obviously it's quite hard to break through into mainstream media like TV or radio, where 90% of the population would have been watching or listening to. Whereas now it's shifting completely, where the majority of people are using social media, and anybody can be seen or heard. And that's powerful in itself, because it's, I'm an advocate for free speech and all of this kind of stuff. That's a different conversation. But it means that people with stories have a platform to tell them. And I always say, if you've got a story to tell, people will listen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Now, kind of moving on from sort of social media and into kind of, I guess your life and career as a whole, what would you say has been your proudest moment so far?
Um, there's been a few standout ones. Obviously playing for England for the first time was a big one. Buying my house at the age of 21, that was a really big achievement for myself, because I always thought, and so did my family, that I'd never move out of home, and you know thought I'd always be reliant on them. So to be able to actually have something to show for my hard work in terms of a house at such a young age, that was a big thing. Graduating uni, that was obviously a big deal for myself as well. Getting a first class degree was, big achievement at the time, and hopefully something that I use in the future, even if I'm not really using it now. But yeah, there's lots of things, and like I say, I'm so grateful for this kind of past 5 years, the journey that I've been on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is really like, I mean, listening to you hear about it, listening to you and hearing about it and listening to you talk about the journey that you've been on, it really is an incredible, sounds like it's been an incredible 5 years for you. But looking to the future then, what would you say are some of your goals and aspirations for the future?
It's quite easy to get a bit carried away and a bit greedy, and be like, I want this, I want that. I think for me, it's just staying consistent and, continuing to use social media as a tool to educate people, but also use it as a tool to kind of support myself, in terms of like occupation and all of that kind of stuff. In terms of football, it's just to continue developing and, mature as a player and hopefully travel the world more and eventually get to something like a Paralympic Games or a World Cup and be in selection for the squad. And yeah, it's just I'm like a big part of my personality is just trying to be a good person, and trying to make sure that you've got your best interests and your priorities in the right way. So yeah, just continuing to help other people as well. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great goal to have as well. I completely agree with you there. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been really, really lovely to get to chat to you. And I've really enjoyed our chat, and I hope you have too. One of the things I really admire about you is how dedicated you are to the content that you create, but also football and everything that you do, but also how kind you are too. I think that's a really underrated quality. But thank you so much for taking a little bit of time out of your day to talk to me today.
No worries at all. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to my audience for listening, and I will see you all next time.